وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون إن الله يعلم ما يدعون من دونه من شيء وهو العزيز الحكيم وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس وما يعقلها إلا العالمون. صدق الله العظيم. بلغنا رسول النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, I recited before you verses from Surah Al-Ankabut, which is chapter 29 of the glorious Quran. And the reason for this chapter being named Ankabut, which means the spider, the chapter of the spider. And this is because there's a mention of the spider within this surah, verse number 41. And in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a similitude, a parable, a mathal, and the theme of our Darus this Mubarak month have been speaking about the asas and amthal of the glorious Quran. So this is another place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a mathal, a similitude, in verse number 41 of Surah Al-Ankabut. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. The example of those people who have taken awliya other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who have taken protectors, who have taken helpers other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. They are like the spider. They are like the spider. اتخذت بيتا. A spider who makes its house, who makes a house. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ. Indeed, the most flimsiest or the most weakest of houses, لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ, is surely the house of the spider. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. If only they knew it. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ مِن شَيْءٍ. Surely Allah knows that they worship instead of Him. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Almighty and He is the All-Wise. Verse number 43. وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ. And these are the amthal, these are the examples and similitudes that we explain to the people, or we give to the people. وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. And only the people who have ilm, only the people who are alimun, those who are learned, only they are able to grasp it and understand it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in verse number 41 gives us this similitude of the house of the spider. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. The example of those people who have taken protectors other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are like what? كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا. They are like the spider who builds a house. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. Indeed, the most weakest of houses is surely the house of the spider. Now, taking protectors other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is obviously referring to the mushrikeen, referring to the people who would regard their idols, or they would regard other deities, and they would make them equivalent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they would seek or worship them in order for them to give them protection, or worship them in order to give them assistance and protect them and help them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they cannot even take that back. They are not able to reclaim it from the fly. So in order to show their weakness, but we spoke about that in quite some detail in regards to the miracles in the fly that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created within it. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an example of the spider's house. Again, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and there's a lot of miracles that find that are also within the spider. So first of all, let's understand this. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
that when the spider makes the web, neither does it have any sort of roof or any sort of walls or any sort of protection over it. So if the wind was to blow a heavy rain, thunderstorm, if any sort of, if there was any sort of, anything that would strike it, or even if you not being fulfilled, then there's a spiritual element to it. The spiritual element is this, that in the spider, it has a very insecure family. It has a very insecure family. There's disputes amongst them. And what is also interesting is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here uses ittakhadat bayta. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the verb which is feminine. He uses a feminine verb for it. The spider that makes the house, and the verb is feminine. It's not masculine. Ittakhadat. This ta at the end is telling us that this is a feminine verb. It's not masculine. It's not ittakhada. It's ittakhadat. So it's a feminine verb. This also shows one of the miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, that the spider web is actually made by the female spider. And this is what has been discovered in modern science, that the one that makes the spider web are not the male spiders, but they are female spiders. They are the female spiders. And we know that in the family of the animal kingdom and the human race and many of the animal and species, the male are dominant. But the spider is such a species that the female is more stronger and it's more dominant. The female is more stronger and more dominant. Just as we found in the mosquitoes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the ba'uda is feminine. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here again informed us that the mosquito that sucks the blood and the mosquito that is dominant in the family of mosquitoes is the female. It's the feminine, it's the female. So here as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using the feminine verb, it indicates that the female spider is actually dominant in the family and in the species of the spider. The female spiders also grow much bigger and larger. And what happens in that house, this is why it's weak, one of the spiritual elements, because if you have a insecure family and if you have disunity in your family and you're always disputing with your own siblings, there's always fights in your house, then that family is what? That house, we say, is weak. It's a weak house. It's a disunited house. There's all sorts of problems in there. Yeah? So what happens in the family of the spider is that when the female spider actually kills its male spider, it actually kills and eats its own male spider that it was coupled with. That it was actually coupled with, it would kill it after they come together. Unless that male spider was fortunate and was able to run away. But you have heard of the black widow, yeah? The black widow, this is actually a spider which is one of the most lethal spiders. Why is it called the black widow? Because this is the most dangerous of them, especially for the males, because it kills its male spiders. So, and then when young ones are born to a spider, the house, it becomes very overcrowded for them. And they want their own space. So what happens even in the siblings of the spiders, they fight with each other for space. They would fight each other for food. And they would end up fighting or killing each other. And also, when the spider gives birth to, the eggs or whatever, after fertilization, it doesn't live for very, very long after that. When it dies, the children begin to eat their own mother. The children begin to eat their own mother. So we find that the house, the family of the spider is also very insecure. And so there's a spiritual reference here that inna awhan al-buyuti labaytul ankabut. Physically it's weak, and spiritually also it is weak. So there's an indication here that if your families are like that, then you've got a very weak family. And you need unity in that family. You need a strong bond with each other. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasized a lot upon strengthening bonds and ties of kinship. And there's a lot of emphasis upon the importance of the unity of family. One of the maqasid of our sharia, one of the maqasid of our laws in Islamic sharia is what? Preservation of family. This is one of the maqasid of sharia. Now, there's other things that are found in this as well, which is mind-blowing, is the spider's web. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this small creature, there's actually over 40,000 different species of spiders. Over how many? 40,000 different species of spiders. Each of them have their own qualities, and each of them, they have their own uniqueness in the web that they create, or the web that they make. And it's like a silky material, but it is said that this material is the only material ever to be found on this earth. It cannot be created. People have tried, scientists have tried to create something like the spider's web, the silk that it uses, and there are over 200,000 different types of silks of the spider, because there's 40,000 species, over 40,000 species. So over 200,000 different types of silk that comes from this spider. But it is very unique. And they've tried to make something like it in the laboratories, but they can't. The closest that they have got to, the closest they got to is the fabric or the material of Kevlar. Kevlar is like a petroleum-based material which is used for bulletproof vests. The military uses this material for their armors, for their armored vehicles, and they use it for bulletproof vests and their helmets in order to protect them. So that's the closest they have got to making what is found in the spider's web, that naturally what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in it. And the way that it creates it, the way that it makes it, the glands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it. Such as other insects, as we read about the fly and the mosquito, similarly with the spider, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created such a mechanism, such technology within it, that no one will ever be able to make something like it. The closest they ever got was to the Kevlar. And recently, they used the silk of the spider and they made a super lens. A super lens was created where they are able to see things which are invisible to the naked eye. And they use the silk of the spider in that lens in order to see things which are invisible to, and they use it in microscopes. And although the house of the spider, Allah is saying, is weak. Why? Another reason why it's weak is because according to us, the size and the thinness of the spider's silk, according to how much it does and according to how much it creates, according to its size and the size of the human being, it's weak for us, yes, because it's thin. It's said that it is more thinner than our hair. But if this was magnified, if the spider's web was magnified, and if it was as big as, what we would regard as something which is a big size, if this was magnified, it is more stronger than iron and steel. It is more stronger than iron and steel. Some have said 5 times more stronger, some have said 10 times more stronger, and it is able to hold and is able to stretch. If there was from the top of the building, if there were cars to fall down from the top of the building, that spider's web, if it was magnified, it is able to hold all of those cars that you would throw, or that would be falling off that building or from a cliff. So if this spider's web was magnified to that extent, it could hold the weight of all of those cars. So it can hold up to thousands of kilos if that was magnified. is the strongest fabric on earth. But because it's so small and so thin, it seems that it's not. But if that was magnified, if that was made bigger, right, it is the most strongest fabric on earth. The most strongest fabric ever. But for the animal kingdom, for the insects, obviously the material would be strong, because if you get trapped in that, if an insect gets trapped in that web, they can't get out. They can't get out. For them, obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to His creation, He gave the creation everything that it needs to survive. Gave everything it needs to. Humans have been given those things that it needs to survive. Animals have given those things that they need to survive. Insects and creatures, they have also been given those things that they need to survive. So similarly, the spider has also been given those things which it is sufficient for it to survive. So وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْأَنْكَبُوتِ. Although Allah here is saying it's the weakest of houses, like we mentioned, because it's not created for that purpose. Number two, spiritually it's weak because of the disunity and the conflict it has with its own family. But if this material that comes out of the spider and the web that it spins, if it was magnified, this is the most strongest fabric or material that can be on the face of this earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through these verses, this is why He says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ. These are examples that Allah gives to the people. وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. None can understand them except those who have knowledge. None can understand them except those who are alimun. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying it's the weakest of houses, then people doing research on that, people looking at the scientific aspect, they found something total opposite. Yes, it's the weakest of houses according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, the way that we perceive it. The way that we perceive it. But if that was magnified, we understand that it is the most strongest of materials and fabrics, which is something that is unique, and human beings cannot create something like it because they need the proteins. When the spider web is made, there are certain proteins that the spider puts into that, and the human can't create that protein because that is unique to the spider. Therefore, they cannot make the material of the spider. The closest they've ever got to is this Kevlar material. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand our glorious book. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand this. So what was the similitude here? It was that the shirk of the people, the idols of these people, they are weak like the spider's web. Just as it cannot protect its own web from the rain and the winds, similarly your idols cannot protect you from the adhab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nor can they give you benefit in that regards. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from all types of deviance and all types of shirk. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlighten our hearts with the nur of the Qur'an and its understanding. Jazakumullahu khairan wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihil kareem. Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم ثبت قلوبنا على الإيمان وثبت أقدامنا على الإسلام. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. جزاكم الله خير.